Hi there. It's so good to be here, talking about something so fundamental to our lives, something so woven into the fabric of our very being, relationships. I've come to understand that there's almost nothing more potent, more life-shaping than the connections we have with others. These ties, they mold us, they help define who we become, they hold up a mirror for us, and yes, they sometimes, with that beautiful ache, break our hearts. That is just part of our beautiful human journey, isn't it? Each of us, carrying around these incredibly tender, very delicate hearts, walking through the world hoping to find a safe haven, hoping to connect, hoping for that sacred space where we are loved as we truly are. Now, before we get going, let's just be real with one another. The terrain of relationships is often messy and imperfect. We are human, our stories are beautiful, painful, hilarious, awkward, all the above. So we aren't looking for perfect today, we are looking for truth. We are looking for our next step. There is this sacred tug to create real connection that, to be honest, is kind of the point. Because we do long to be seen, known, and loved. That's what I hear our souls whispering all the time. And that's so beautiful, right? And it's because we yearn so deeply that we can sometimes fall into spaces that, well, they might not actually nurture the fullness of our hearts. So if we found ourselves there, know you aren't alone. It isn't something we should be ashamed of. It's something we can learn from. And it isn't going to help you become all God intended you to become. It may actually hinder it. And hey, talking about this, yeah, it's vulnerable territory. Feels kind of risky, like pulling back the curtains on our deepest fears. We're talking about hurt and doubt and fear that maybe, just maybe, not every connection will be for the good. I get it. And honestly, vulnerability, for me, well, I think it's where bravery takes a bow. Showing up fully, questions, baggage, and all that's when true healing happens, when real change has a fighting chance. I remember when I was in therapy, I cried on the regular, like all the time, and it was scary. I couldn't imagine going deeper into what caused it. The vulnerability just felt huge. And then I finally was like, well, here goes. And then, all that stuff didn't matter anymore because I was ready to dig in and move forward. I'm here because of my learning process. It's taken me to some messy places, both the external relationships and the ones in the spaces of my heart. But with that in my soul, what I offer you today isn't born from any sort of academic pedestal. I'm a student in this space of connection. A lot of times, what people try to give us or take away from us, we can see through others' stories because we have our own, right? This is about the stuff I've been navigating and feeling alongside you. What I've come to realize is that a lot of the truth and the insight of these things has been in stories throughout the Bible. I've also taken it deeper, with other teachings, like what my beloved C.S. Lewis gave us. Those writings just put all this in this amazing place. All this is with the hope that what I have gone through and found for myself helps you with what you're facing. It's about navigating with open eyes and trusting that quiet inner knowing. The intuition the Bible calls discernment, Let's be crystal clear here, this isn't about blaming anyone. There's nothing wrong with you or your heart. Nor is it an us versus them kind of conversation, assigning some as good and some as bad guys. This isn't a pointing fingers exercise. That, I've learned, it just leads to nowhere except frustration and separation, and not understanding. This is about holding up a magnifying glass to see if we might be under any kind of influence, known and maybe even unknown, from outside our deepest convictions and most vulnerable parts of our spirit. It's for growth. So if you're like me, and you find yourself hearing that little, still, small voice asking is everything, okay, then that's really beautiful because you aren't ignoring it. It's a call to dig in and see what's up in a loving, non-judgmental, gracious space. We know there's beauty, light, and growth in the connections that feed the sacred in our souls, relationships that come alongside us, that can't be explained as something random or some cosmic coincidence. These spaces, man, they nurture who we are created to be. So here's a truth for us human beings. We crave those spaces of connection, and that's just a beautiful thing about how we were created. Yet with this open heart that just desires those connections, man, that makes us so incredibly vulnerable too. We tend to feel a bit exposed in those times we long for realness, to connect in truth with others. There are times we get so mixed up by it all, When what appears on the surface feels right, or maybe the connections seem like our prayers have been answered, it pulls on us. It all seems just too good to be true. And maybe it is. This life is a mix of experiences. Some will always pull us closer to where we need to be. Some? Well, they seem to try to pull us off of that. There are times we feel like our connection just wasn't from God at all. Not a person, not in spirit. You can just feel that something wasn't right, and the old ways can teach us things if we aren't ignoring them, right? There has been deep wisdom on this in books, old books with things the Bible shares over and over, to just be wary to pay attention. Those stories also offer this sense that sometimes it is the unseen. Maybe manipulation or even forces of chaos, something seeking to take away who we are or pull us away from who we are created to be. And you're like, well, isn't all that some crazy idea? Well, I just think it just might make it real if we look at what those ancient authors called the real issue of how evil increases at a compound interest. Like ... the little compromises in our decisions can really start taking us off of the path we truly want, right? And C.S. Lewis even observed this all when he reminded us we all get the little yes, the choice in our spirit in, and God ultimately will make it your will, rather than a holy intention. And there's times that a gut feeling, and this I have found for myself in the deepest spaces in my own spirit, if you hear the slightest nope or feel off center or unsettled, listen to that intuition that is actually holy guidance. A true compass is your internal one, and as hard as it is at times, we need to follow the little whispers of our own heart, as it helps us look more intentionally. And we need that discernment of recognizing when something we may want might not be for us. To acknowledge if this connection is tugging us away from the essence of our spirit and towards what it seems like our human heart is pulling for us towards. So how do we actually hold both parts, this very sacred core we want so desperately to protect, and also our inner knowing of what to avoid? That's the question. How to find peace within this often hard landscape. It all just sounds hard and confusing, but it isn't. That's what we are unpacking right here, right now, in these very words. It is not easy and never perfect, and this isn't just a list or like a guide. Let's see it more like the map that'll guide us with empathy, to learn, and maybe help you understand. Now, through all of it, what I have started noticing over and over again, in these things that felt not aligned, I think it's good to share. Call them what you like, clues, breadcrumbs, even warnings. I like the term 7 sacred markers. Not like an agenda we've got to go down, but they've showed up over and over for me, in my own relationships and experiences, and honestly, the way God was moving throughout Scripture, just calling those old ways red flags. I've looked hard to see the pattern in these spaces, so maybe I wouldn't step in them myself. And maybe sharing with you the path might help keep you, or yourself, from feeling so lost when the connections or relationships get cloudy. These sacred markers, they're about awareness, clarity, empathy. So that we show up as who we were intended, not as who another may desire us to be, okay? Because you are a precious, magnificent, whole, perfect part of the beautiful design. We are enough, and nothing will be truly filling us when we fall into a space where that truth becomes compromised or questioned. So keep that light of truth for yourselves, because you are wonderful, unique, and enough. Now let's walk this path and see how these markers may help. It happens. The first spark. Sometimes those first experiences seem as if everything aligns, as if finally everything you could ask for just shows up, and they come to you like the speed of light, like being hit by the perfect love. Then all of a sudden their attention feels ... too much. The rush becomes relentless, and suddenly they want more and faster than your heart can process it. And we get into the chaos, and it starts making the head spin, because it isn't pace for the relationship, but for what someone wants it to be. Does that make sense? That doesn't have the peace or freedom that you may have experienced from authentic connections. You are meant to have that space in every interaction. I know we hear so often the advice, listen to your heart. Follow what your body is pulling for. Listen to what feels right. And for some ... that kind of attention does feels good. For a bit. When what they may not see coming with this rush, or all the energy, or how someone might get hooked up and caught. when honestly a lot of it has been all the manipulation of a very fragile person seeking to try to keep the pace, the control. As that little bit of the power dynamic starts, it just doesn't feel so beautiful when your soul gets nudged by those things, huh? What started as all that wonderful hope and excitement starts turning in what looks like a desire to get whatever they are wanting. It may come through that neediness, that desperate pull on the heartstrings. You see yourself and your choices in relationship not so different than one being taken hostage, rather than that sacred dance of love. As all this shows, we remember, in this heart tug between the my will and thy will, that what might feel most aligned can, if you aren't looking for it, could become the most disarming space you end up walking. The kind of love where one person just seeks power and manipulation by their terms and isn't listening to the guidance from grace, which ultimately brings us into our core and our own self, and not something dictated by someone who can't even fill their own space with grace. The constant pushing, that manipulation for whatever reasons they may feel. It does feel pretty scary, doesn't it? When there really is a peace, a freedom, the pace flows. Remember when the love just feels like home. This rush doesn't, and in that moment I hope you may be prompted to maybe go just a bit deeper to the path you truly want for your life. If that's a red flag, it really should be, because it is calling you for some serious prayerful pause and ask this important thing: where is peace in the energy of this? God's plans flow within patience, not chaos. So how can you reclaim peace? I feel your friend on this one. This hit pretty deep for me when I first understood it, and how so very easily I feel all of us tend to give over and fall. Sometimes it's the pretty part, those shiny distractions of luxuriousness, all that stuff that might have come when I feel less than. In my heart, you see how easy this one hits close. These offers the pretty things that seem to appear on our journey. It feels kind of like a sign, right? A message from above, right? It really can appear that way in the very first moment, when what they might show to others about their abundance becomes part of their game and their manipulation to keep us on the hook. When a person chooses you with that display of external offerings, I learned hard it's so important to truly check in the space. Intention, I think. You know, true heart generosity flows naturally when you've met a spirit. The desire to give. It should come from this amazing sacred heart and without expectation. Not like we were being kept to stay through material offerings or gifts to fill some void, but that true kindness coming from true self. When, to be honest, when gifts are a manipulation and become controlling, those can just become very weighty in our spaces, because I have personally felt their weight. I had gifts I felt like a literal leash rather than being some beautiful thing. In truth, you're never alone on this space, friend. But look, our enemy, the tricky little voice in our soul, knows the games of the human condition. Those gotta have it impulses, those more than impulses. How so very easily it gets us focused on what we can get rather than what we are, how we grow. Oh, as C.S. Lewis knew all too well, prosperity knits a man to the world. He had those little kernels of truth. Just one look, friend, if this material obsession starts hooking on, it may actually just get that tiny little grip on all we have and pull us toward all this is less than. Not truly rich, not deeply cared for. So take a moment. In that connection, what do we feel pulling? What matters more? It isn't stuff, it's our soul, is our core connections to others. So if a connection is all about external things than about the inner peace, it's always best to just step back and give ourselves space to check in, to align and let go of those illusions. God intends something deeper, some sacred path to what really can build all of that real treasure. The truest connections. These, the beautiful gifts that only can feed the soul, not fill up a room. It calls to go deeper. Let's always check those layers before giving into things that, at first, only look to provide, but then, oh friend, then. I think we might all cringe in our truth as those conversations start happening, because who has not fallen prey to what is sold in our culture, that everyone wants to be free of all that messy obligation stuff and responsibility, when we long so desperately to have people care enough to commit. Here's another sneaky one, that our culture really likes free spirit. And for real, what a lie and cover that some folks sell on us, this thing. The independent, live for the moment, when underneath all of this surface stuff might be a space to keep us disconnected. The very thing, commitment. Is commitment a problem in those spaces when they can't promise a connection based in truth? Isn't that telling itself something about how that person is feeling about what we may deserve or want? A good person has a soul deep love for responsibility to love. When there are no commitments and the family that goes with it, the enemy likes it because a spirit can never truly grow when accountability is seen as the evil stepmother. You with me? God created family. Those spaces we show up. Make promises in this, we build the safety and structure we crave. You feel it? When someone does not honor that calling, then all that they may be trying to distract and disengage from what we deeply crave, this true reflection of what God's love means for us. Marriage isn't just an earthly contract, is it? And that doesn't make those without it are any less. We need to remember it's what God used to tell the biggest part of our story with, and that covenant connection is not supposed to be some space where folks hide behind some random notion about personal freedoms and not stepping up to building that legacy. It's meant to tell God's promise, and in that when we align in God, we want to reflect His truth with all of that amazing and powerful gift in the family relationship. The old saying, as C.S. Lewis taught me, is that in this world what seems exciting can quickly be a trap. As things like that aren't free, but all it does is it locks people from God in fear rather than embracing the truth with His freedom. There are stories, I even have some, where my soul saw that kind of individual as free-spirited until it all fell into shambles, where those free ways also showed me how there's only a freedom for some, rather than all. Those who keep telling you their truths of what freedom might mean, they don't give themselves away because they only want it. That's their desire for them. And you? Not so much when their fear controls what you receive. This idea of that independent or maybe commitment phobic, often there might be something beneath it that has more to say about their hearts than anything else. When their words start feeling a little shallow rather than that true love with commitment and real promise, I'm really hopeful it'll move a bit deep down in you with this truth. When there isn't room for this kind of a safe bond, when we aren't committed to the others, it is just an unsafe place for growth, not for God. Remember, God wants us whole with stability. We need safe people on this road, not something constantly changing with shifting sand. God always asks, how can you claim stability that truly does lead to real lasting growth when this very thing, the true space we may desperately desire, may be a lie, only being pushed so one is freed up from true relationship or accountability with it? So how to show yourself care? By looking deeper for those who desire that space together and to make something wonderful that reflects it all. How does it fit with grace? That's where we check in for this one. All right, friends, I want to talk about this one. This is something, a core lesson from God in what we can all relate to, because I am convinced that this is the one that changes all the things when you're in a connection. Do you move towards or away from that peace with God? Have you ever seen how you get involved and it's all so grand and exciting in this relationship until slowly you're pulling back your practices you worked hard to maintain? Is the connection bringing your faith deeper? Is your focus of love and purpose with Him expanding, drawing you into better practices? Do you crave time to honor the quiet space between you and God and others? Or do your soul get a quiet, uneasy stirring within yourself and you start not finding time to pray? Maybe the faith, it's a little weaker than it was. Does any of it feel, honestly, like what that voice in you might feel as compromised to old desires? Does the light get dim within it? Because here's the thing, our inner world is meant to be seen as a space for holy power that the Bible teaches is meant to be protected, right? Our temple is something that cannot be tainted nor meant to be pulled by some connection. This is especially a space we need to respect, because especially our desires of an intimate space in all the levels, emotional, physical, and that deepest, most precious space can literally bind up spirits to others in deep soul spaces called soul ties, which become messy when the people involved aren't operating within the alignment of a truly honest covenant. And sometimes we start to feel this. I remember how I used to feel some type of freedom, something fun, until what I knew to be God wasn't quite as important in all I gave, and the old ways pulled harder to have space and a sense of something. The thing with old sins, old desires, especially sexual immorality and choices against your faith. It taints everything. This old idea can slowly eat away the inner places that only grow deeper when connected, and what gets all those threads of those parts pulling away. Maybe one of you gives more attention there than the spiritual connection to where a true love may honor your God rather than trying to become God with you. That stuff has a way, as Lewis noted, it just puts our soul on that very quiet and easy and slippery slope right where hell might not just feel a possibility right now. That slope, he said, where those tiny little moments. It isn't in any crazy rebellion, but that tiny and seemingly harmless decision, and you turn one direction from God over and over, and before you know it, your spiritual distance from the very connection you wanted so much isn't aligned, no matter how amazing things look to all. You'll be ignoring red flags because of what seems too small. So friends, listen carefully. It is okay to look around. Be present. The path with that beloved one you need to look. Where does it go? Does it go where the Spirit wants to, and where you're most powerful and aligned towards love, or all those slow compromises which move further than you'd even believe possible? I've been here in the spaces, and know that a godly union builds you in love or love. You walk as partners with a stronger understanding that, with all those other parts of your life aligned, the truest things grow. If things don't, then what that heart thing, the red flags keep on repeating. This may very well be it. Oh, this one here. Feels like what I have called one of those sneaky little truths we can learn by. This one reminds me to look in, where have I been as well as what am I stepping into? Because sometimes it all just gets replayed, and then I see the truth, our steps that keep us stuck, and it is so crazy how some old stuff keeps calling, isn't it? Especially in places that the old you, oh, this isn't for me right now, and then that familiar path calls through someone new to take you on your walk once again, even when you didn't want it there. How messed up is that that one is willing to pull on you, as another who knows where you want to be pulls back in old toxic spots that used to hold you captive, right? But it can become that way with anyone, or maybe environments. Old choices, even what we used to crave, and it makes a point that something is still working. That someone, another starts undermining what was a victorious, turning to a, I have fallen for my old temptations. Isn't this what I meant not to do? Now here's this space where they begin with little ways like not letting those old patterns seem that awful to push past what we learned was not for our highest good, right? Maybe even start mocking a better path, because now that it seems a good option, they're challenged in their actions, as if it's not a true threat. Maybe they have come around as a friend with an invite of, oh, don't worry, it isn't as big a deal. When that is just our inner gremlin, making things feel a bit easier to follow instead of truth of where to go in life. As Lewis wisely gave me, those times it keeps things out. That is that evil, where your mind just keeps forgetting, because they are making the distractions seem so much less than, and as if your old lessons are no big deal at all. That thing can be incredibly hard and even confusing. See, here's that little tiny part where even that harmless thing, and it's a one-time thing, slowly has an easier way to drag our steps so far down, that once what I worked so incredibly hard to become starts turning to compromise, until, friend, it starts feeling easy to rebel. The point where we forget all we learned, where old desires keep us, rather than freedom they keep a captive. The difference though, the good people, the ones sent from heaven, will celebrate this growth, and they hold on tight to these boundaries for your highest self. This helps all grow stronger in those amazing ways together, rather than taking things that can easily throw us back down those rungs. When someone encourages where we might want to abandon the places that set you free, they love you. They won't try to make your truth small for their desires and their small minds or their control. If you see this, take pause and step way ye back. It's a warning that you know this better. You've won battles here. Never step down with people who are on a different road and not honoring what God created within you to see those places too. Okay, friend. This next part is a deep cut in the journey. What are those echoes of a religious walk when they walk and talk a very holy path? Then there is their true actions. The thing when all that we may deeply want can get confused with their act, and never their walk, when a walk only honors self, when the outward appearances try hard and feel almost authentic, when they hide such pain or choices. This kind of a person might know what all the great verses. Maybe they might be the go-to people for a sermon at the altar. That may very well hide this, that their choices are a dark space that feels nothing but evil, that covers this hollowness in spirit, because a relationship is not for a performance that it is meant for, but to nurture the true essence and the heart with faith that actually is real. All these spaces, these all feel unsafe for those who truly love all this part. This is hard to even recognize, especially at the start or in the areas you've yet to really grow. All of that surface show, it just might keep us far from grace and away from the light that we, or even our children, should truly be connected with. Oh, those echoes of goodness, all those outer performances without anything from within. Man, C.S. Lewis nailed it. A moderate religion is as good as no religion at all. He truly understood all of what might occur, as okay to God actually does the most damage. And the real ones walk a holy path because it feeds them, but others walk the stage for the show, right? And how do we really learn that with true heart and clarity when there's no aligning of actions and behavior, especially behind closed doors, eh? The truth of the story in Bible has told that very thing tests their fruit, their actions. True disciples were talking love, true joy, a genuine peace and gentleness, all the way. True self-awareness. But those walking a shadowed and darker path might know a language, but their actions tell something very real when that action doesn't mirror in this walk. This truth in these people who may know so well on how to say the perfect things, they manipulate, they try hard to appear, but all this space will be pulling those beautiful hearts with all that good. How is our discernment really able to see and make such distinctions then, if they don't appear in surface spaces when it may take deep intimacy, and knowing to see, is this that sacred truth? Friends, watch more their actions rather than the amazing words, because they will speak loud over all those small and subtle acts when a faith appears rather than it's walked. That's key. If one space doesn't truly align, this marker tells it so very clearly of some spaces you just aren't supposed to be part of anymore. Now the final one. Friend. This is key, that counterfeit thing the devil always brings when you've been believing all is set for an amazing relationship, is that it can appear from the heavens at that space. Those perfect relationships and jobs. Maybe even dreams they start showing, and you may start feeling those feelings, and that sense, is it the thing? I know this to be it, right before the space of a powerful alignment from our spirit. That feeling is not what its truth can be. This is key here. That is some strategic move the other side tries, where before it can align, it will just place something to make us stop seeing clearly. Because this grand thing seems like a match in some cosmic perfection with all your plans. So many people go down this road where it feels real, the energy, those perfect synchronicities. All in line, so as they pull you, make that promise seem what has been always promised rather than their fake, but ultimately will just leave a trail behind when there is not any peace within the person at the end, when all you have now felt for so long was only ever about their heart. If that connection drains as dry it has shown. Where true love builds in connection, the energy builds stronger if it doesn't feel like an embrace. They just keep taking what you have, rather than honoring it. These folks who move with only me, where that self-centered focus will just become a hellscape if you're open enough to that, to see and hear that old Lewis adage, where we all start living in our grievances, because it's all we could ever focus on. What they want, what they always want. Where our joy turns to chaos because no one will just allow us to hold onto our core, rather than a focus of just me. Friend, it really comes down to all this feeling. All your intuition. We need it all when discerning where we might grow in safety and peace and truth with another. But this may very well be a setup for our dreams, our joy, everything we hold dear for. All you do is be ready for what isn't authentic in our hearts and how that doesn't fit. Okay? Because a true sacred space flows with kindness and peace, with growth, rather than that exhausting tug of making self happy. The fake? It does not align, does not respect your path. They are seeking their wants, never to care for your own truth, nor help it soar. That is truth, my friend, and a powerful lesson to give into this heart and hear it well. So friends, we've truly looked over what is within you, This isn't a space of judgment, it's a space where we together look deep, and that is not the same as having judgment. All we've given into, what is real within and truly worth stepping further toward for, to go a bit further into. It is about awareness and growth. Yes, even grace with a real path for peace with every connection as it allows it rather than takes your energy as their fuel. Those places for truth and how to walk this path together by remembering. You are truly enough with all those tender layers you've been carrying through. Your stories make that true for yourself because your heart makes you magnificent. Because through each challenge, each win, it is the authentic human story, and that means a lot. Each small or big, it truly helps us in those quiet spots, in all those connections, in those spaces, so that maybe we see a bit clearer that something wasn't from truth or even good intention, because ultimately that isn't serving you. To step further with discernment, it's something that the Spirit is trying to build that allows for our peace. All of what I have written, none of this, is designed to scare you or keep you from the most sacred of all. Real truth, right? This whole idea for us in this time together to take space. This deep practice where those connections of peace within your core grow even greater than before. Rooting deep and finding in God's word and truth all it is trying to teach and heal all parts that have been messy for a time in places we've always held together within, with that faith. That is something too always important and needs those little nudges that will help all of the connections that call, and for our steps too. It may feel like a burden, but it's your beautiful path. It is so much you. And to feel this isn't all wrong. If we felt stuck, we simply can start anew. Those that don't, step off. Walk this amazing path that allows to love more, better in our new and most amazing, powerful way when those others hold true within these truths. If any of these signs appear in connections, then pause, pray, and if any more should appear. There is never any harm in taking time out to let them go and for our steps to start on our amazing and most powerful way forward. Not with anyone pulling, but what God meant it all along. For love, for belonging and joy. And I trust that you will not step anywhere or into spaces with less, as all you truly deserve it more, and oh, how the joy in that alone.